Hello, everyone. I'm back with SuperFang99. It is another Friday. It is another day to look at the Drowned City cards, the whole set at once. How's it going?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to take a look. I finally got my box in, and I've been taking a brief look at them as well. But excited to discuss them with you as always.
So we're going to look at the Survivor cards, and then because we want to fill out the set before we tackle the big old hunking pile of specialist cards, we'll look at the four neutrals too. So without further ado, we just want to briefly mention that a lot of these cards are going to be built for George Barnaby. And I think what's her name, Marion, can take some of these too, but mostly we're looking for George and his discard shenanigans. So
Indeed.
yeah, he gets the boat. When you After you discard a card from your hand, you get to put it face down beneath him and then draw a card. So he really wants to discard things during various phases, and then he can draw them back and commit them, which is really cool.
That's right.
Seems like a strong investigator. I haven't played with him myself, but I know I've seen some really good things happen. So let's see what kind of tools he gets. Tools being the operative word, because the first card is Anchor Chain, a 3-cost asset item tool. And while it is in your hand, you may perform the action ability here. If you do, discard it instead of exhausting it. All three of the tools we're going to see in a second are the same. So they have that ability, and then you can exhaust Anchor Chain, evade, get +1 agility for this evasion attempt. If you successfully evade a non-elite enemy, you may discard one card from your hand to prevent that enemy from readying during the next upkeep phase. So a little freeze effect there. Takes up a hand slot unless you're just doing it as part of your hand anyway. I'm just going to briefly mention that the other ones that are here too, Hand Hook, it's fight +1 damage, and Nautical Charts. This one is get additional clue.
Yeah. Yeah, these are interesting. I'm honestly not really sure how to evaluate them at this point. I do think if any of them are like the most powerful, it definitely would be nautical charts just because of the rate on there. Like I think hand hook is like a little bit outclassed when it comes to dealing damage because I really don't want to have to spend 2 cards to be able to deal +1 damage to an enemy. But nautical charts is a good way to use like extra cards to get additional clues, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, since 2 clues at this point is kind of equivalent to 3 damage, so it's a little bit better on rate there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do think that there is some utility with these, obviously, when it comes to not having to play them in order to activate their action ability. And in effect, it's kind of like you're spending 2 cards to get the bonus on them if you wanted to anyway, since you're not playing an action, spending an action to play them. Um, so I'm honestly having a hard time evaluating these. The only thing I really think is nautical chart seems okay slash maybe good.
Mm-hmm. I think they're all okay to good, and then maybe Nautical Charts is just a bit better since I think
Yeah,
it's okay to waste a card to get a clue since you're usually progressing the game. And did you really need that other card when you just end the game right now? Probably not.
yeah.
Of
I mean, in
course,
theory, like nautical charts is it turns every card in your hand to deduction.
deduction.
Same
Yeah.
thing with hand hook. It turns every card in your hand to vicious blow.
Mm-hmm.
But hand hook as well, since it takes if we're just assuming that you're doing it for the playing it and then fighting with it, like usually we want vicious blows on things that already deal base 2 damage so that we can
Mm-hmm.
get like the 3rd damage hump, which is a problem with hand hook. So that's why I think nautical charge is good, is because I would like gladly have every card in my hand be deduction all the time. So yeah.
Yeah. Let's just mention that Anchor Chain, we don't really have this effect as a skill card. So it's
Yeah.
kind of neat to have this ability on a card.
Yeah, it's true.
Disguise does this, slip away, I suppose, but
Hmm.
not that easy to get the effect. And I think it's pretty good. For the most part, all three of these get better when you want to discard cards for other reasons.
That's true. Yeah.
So for George, right, you're discarding the card and then drawing another card.
Right.
And potentially you're discarding them for like fodder for other things like uh we don't have the upgraded winging it because it doesn't exist yet, but the upgraded improvised weapon here is something that you would rather have in the discard pile, so maybe it's like good fodder for these effects.
That's true.
So
Yeah,
i,
and
I
in
like that.
effect, like if you discard a skill card with these assets, you effectively get to still commit them if you're Barnaby, since they're just underneath you. So that's also nice to get their effect. I mean,
That's true.
um,
It's still during the skill test you can do it. Yeah.
exactly.
I this is kind of funny. Like they're all three are exactly the same except for what they do. I wish that hand hook cost a little bit less.
Mm,
I don't mind it
yeah,
as a level 0 weapon, right? Like
yeah,
Fire X requires you to get rid of all your resources before it does the extra damage.
right,
Meat Cleaver makes you take the horror.
right. That's also 3 resources, right?
Mm-hmm. That one's 3
Yeah,
resources. Fire X is just 1.
yeah.
At level 0, your other survivor option is what, the Derringer, I guess, which
That's
limited by
3 for
ammo.
2 bullets.
Right.
Yeah, albeit 2 assured bullets.
Mm-hmm. So I think that, well, it's true that cards are a little bit harder to come by than resources. This one just doesn't look as good because I don't think you can
Right.
have a good plan of always discarding. But you know what? Not having played with it, maybe in George, though, you can make that as just part of an engine.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, so I think it's actually, on first read, this one was like, ew. But
Yeah.
with comparison to the other survivor options, I think it might be okay. I wish it didn't exhaust.
Yeah, yeah, I think that definitely is part of the problem with it. Especially since it's a weapon. Like
Mm-hmm.
exhausting for a nautical charge is not a problem. It's just an extra deduction once a turn, which is, that is Rex Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Fingerprint Kit
so
does the same thing. It exhausts. So.
exactly, and yeah, so exhausting when it comes to weapons is always a problem. And again, when you exhaust for an evade, usually that's fine since either you're only evading one enemy or you like have another way to deal with the other one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So there's just maybe could be tweaked a bit differently, but you know what? It's a cool looking card. So
Yeah,
all right. I noticed that you move things around in order because
I did.
Lawrence
This guy was
Carlisle,
first.
he's actually card number 83. Nautical charts is alphabetically later, but those 3 definitely go together. Yeah. All right. So this guy costs 3 as well, and he gives you +1 intellect reaction after you discard 1 or more cards from your hand during your turn. Exhaust him, gain 1 resource, 1 health,
Dr.
1
Mylan's
sanity.
survivor brother.
Mm-hmm. Really, really could. I mean, I think you're just gonna. I mean, you're not putting him in a deck unless you're doing this every turn,
You're
right?
right. Yeah. Yeah. And if you are, that's really, really good, I think.
Mm-hmm. So it lets you afford some of these more expensive things, and I'm not sure what else you're
Yeah.
using the resources for, but I'm sure you'll find something.
I do think this is really good for off-class survivor investigators because I always feel like in survivor investigators, I rarely need to have a lot of money, not just because of dark horse builds or whatever, just because their cards are usually costed lower.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're like Tommy Muldoon, who wait, that's his name, right? What am I thinking of?
Yeah, the Guardian.
Yeah, that's right. I was, you know what, that's right. I was gonna mix it with Tommy Malloy, which is Nathaniel's weakness. I don't know
Yeah.
why. Anyway, if you're Tommy Muldoon, this guy can act as a lot of good resource generation. Obviously, maybe he doesn't really have a problem with that. But any like off-class survivor class that needs resources that can reliably do this discard stuff can be really good.
Mm-hmm. I think that even Min probably likes it because
Oh yeah,
it's 1 cheaper than Dr. Milan, so why not this?
true.
Do you miss the 1 extra sanity? Probably not. I think Survivor can deal with, only a 1/1 soak here.
Probably fine.
But if you do miss that extra sanity, why not the Profane Idol?
There we go.
It can only be played from discard pile, so, all the stuff that we talked about, putting things in your discard pile, here's more fodder for it. It only costs 1, though. When Profane Idol is defeated, shuffle it into your deck instead of discarding it. 3 sanity. Accessory slot. So this is the trash can lid from
Yep.
a couple cycles ago.
Honestly, I'm trying to remember what even that card was called because I only know it by it being a trash can.
Yeah, Improvised Shield. It took up a hand
That sounds
slot,
right.
and it was 3 health, and it was basically exactly the same text here otherwise.
Correct. Well, accessory slot I do think is better than hand slot because
Yes.
the hand slot was like it could interrupt other things going on.
Mm-hmm.
Accessory slot obviously that's the slot for your cherished keepsake, which this also fills that role, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
At least in Survivor. I think it's pretty good. I mean, I could definitely think of a lot of survivors that would really like this. So Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if I mean, so there's like two things going on here, right? Like it's better than Cherish Keepsake for like the one resource is not that big of a deal in a lot of decks, I would say, if you
Yeah.
want that extra sanity. But then like do you get some benefit for it shuffling into your deck instead of discarding it, or is that a downside?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess that's just obvious. It's obviously so you can't cycle it over and over again, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe if you're drawing a lot, then you could, in theory, overcome that. Um, like I don't know if there's really good examples of that. Maybe Daryl Simmons or something. Honestly, I think Daryl would like this.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, he likes the soak for his weakness.
yeah,
I'm thinking of like interesting interactions where getting stuff back into your deck is easier than, I mean, it shouldn't be easier than getting it from your discard pile, but, um, well, we'll get to a card later that might be helpful to shuffle your deck rather than just draw through it normally.
right.
So
Yeah, good point.
put a pin in that. All right, we got a trio of events, and one of them came out a long time ago.
Yeah,
And they are this one is a catch. The next one, this one evades. The next one here is unconventional method, and then there is everyone's favorite act of desperation, which is a fight version. I'll just remind everyone the fight version came out in Circle Undone and was as an initial cost to play it. Choose a discard an item asset takes up at least one hand slot from your hand or play area. Fight, you get plus X combat for the investigation, where it's the chosen asset's printed resource cost. If you succeed and the asset was in your play area, you got to gain resources equal to its cost. So really neat for all kinds of builds that like you throw a weapon at something basically.
yep,
Now, these two are similar, although they are not resource generation cards. They give you something else. They give you an extra clue for unconventional method. They give you, well, the same freeze effect that we
freeze. Yeah,
had from before.
yeah. So I think the tricky thing here is that obviously they were completing a cycle, and Active Desperation is so good
Mm-hmm.
that I don't know if they maybe were trying to enable the cycle to be also insanely broken. Because like Active Desperation is really really good, specifically because it like gets you the resources back so you can play other things.
Yeah, and I don't know if I
Um,
mentioned that it does +1 damage. I probably missed that saying that, but it is good because it does the 2 damage you like most of the time,
exactly.
and it gets you the resources.
Yeah. That being said, obviously, if it I think that there is a argument to be made that like, oh, getting an additional clue is probably worth both of those effects because it wouldn't just be worth the +1 damage, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so again, I think unconventional method is honestly pretty good. Um, Especially if you have item assets that are expendable. I think the nice thing about Active Desperation is that a lot of the hand slot assets that can be thrown away also line up with I do want to kill things. Example, the guns, right?
Yeah.
Um, and
You,
so unconventional method is there needs to be enough item assets to take up a hand slot that you're also kind of either in the clue game where you're like, okay, I want to throw away my fingerprint kit, for example, to get an extra clue. Um, or this could be like um, a flex card for someone who is fighting with guns, and then they can use this to be like, oh, we'll get some clues as well. Um, that's why I think this is actually pretty good. Um,
That's right. So
yeah.
the you hit the nail on the head there. That the reason why Active Desperation is so good is because it's your backup to your weapon running out of charges or ammo.
Yep.
What are you throwing away if you're trying to get clues? It could be a fingerprint kit. Like that seems reasonable there, but of course you always could just basic investigate, I suppose. This is good. But like what else might you want to throw away? Grim Memoir that's already out of secrets. That seems all right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that seems okay. Um, I mean, I think that that's maybe a reason, like as in the flex argument, where it's
Yes,
like a fighter would still take this because they could throw away their empty guns to get some clues on the side,
that's right.
um, things like that.
I agree with
And
that.
that's yeah. So I'm unsure about catch, basically. That like it is obviously good tech to have some evasion stuff. It only gets non-elites, which is kind of a problem. Because honestly, for those, you'd probably rather just kill them. So I'm not really sure about catch. What do you think?
So before I say any more, I guess the question is like, why do you want these in your deck compared to just running the asset versions that also kind of have the event text on them? in the sense
Mm.
that you get to do the thing in your hand, right?
Yeah. Right.
So the difference between anchor chain, it also does the same. Like you can't do anything against. Well, I mean, it still evades the elite, but it won't do the stopping them from readying. Uh, so the difference here is that you need to discard 2 cards from your hand, like the one that's the anchor chain in your hand if you're doing it using it like an event. And
Yeah.
this one you use the one that's in your hand and play area, I guess.
Right.
And that's I don't know if that's that much better to have as a backup plan, but
Right.
so maybe it is the flex argument that like you really want to get clues or something and you're not going to put nautical charts in because that's like not really what you want to do most of your
Yeah.
game. So these are like events that do something different than what you usually do.
Yeah. I agree
Okay,
with that.
so back to like catch itself. So slip away does the same thing, but you need to have an item asset in play already. That's the part I don't
Yeah.
really like.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably obviously you can still discard from hand. It's just that you won't get the extra effect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's a little annoying in case you really needed to evade something at like a high skill value.
Right.
Um, but yeah, like if for me personally, I would rather just take like manual dexterity to be able to also cycle the card.
Mm-hmm.
Because this does seem like it goes down 2 cards specifically for catch. Like I think unconventional method's still good, but maybe that's just because of my playstyle as well. That like I'm not really a fan of big evade events specifically, because they usually require like a lot of value to get out. Because otherwise you're just kicking the can down the road,
Mm-hmm.
for a card. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
I think this would be more interesting if it did the bait and switch text, where
What is that text again?
it moves them to a connecting location, I think,
Right? Yeah, maybe.
or you move or something. So we got that from Bums Rush earlier, where if you
That's right.
succeeded, you get to move the enemy away,
Yeah.
just to make things a bit different. Like it just seems too samey with the asset version,
Yeah.
but the requirement is a bit tougher. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to a level 0 skill. Last level 0 card we have, which is Contemplative. Innate skill, no icons. You may commit Contemplative to an investigation or skill test during a parlay attempt at your location or a connecting location. Very friendly. Lots of things you can commit this to. And if this test is successful, the performing investigator discovers 1 clue at their location. This is long shot, but actually a little different.
The staple, in my opinion.
Yeah, why would you not run this? I feel like again, the
Yeah.
icon lack of icon compared to, deduction is not that noticeable.
Yeah.
This just says discover 1 clue, but also you get to throw it onto someone else at a different location. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
That's crazy.
Hot tech here. Longshot was, sort of similar, which I also think is a very good card. But
Yeah.
that one makes you do like that investigator deals a damage to that enemy or something that you were evading or fighting.
Yep.
This one is just a blanket. You discover 1 clue.
Yep.
Well, they do. So if you're playing the Scarlet Keys, this counts
Oh,
as a separate clue
instance
discovery.
of yeah, you get 2 decoys at once.
You can get 2 decoys at once.
Oh,
Longshot doesn't work here because when you're like evading an enemy, rather a mini card as if it were an enemy,
yeah.
it doesn't do a damage to that enemy. There is no enemy. It was a mini card.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Yep.
this works because it's a totally separate, non-contingent part
Yeah.
of the.
Like it doesn't say gain an additional clue or something parlay. Yeah, that makes sense. Huh.
It can't say additional because it may not be a
Right.
investigation,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
This is really good.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. The difference is long shot would have to say deal 1 damage to an enemy at that investigator's location or something like
Correct.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah. I mean, it's Scarlet Keys, obviously weird stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very niche little conversation, but indeed that it is written differently, so it works differently.
Yep. I don't honestly have too much to say. I think it's really good. You should take it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're a survivor. Like the one icon that is missing compared to deduction does not matter as much.
Yep.
All right, that's it for level 0. I feel like before I move on, like everything we've seen so far is like filling out other things that we've already seen. Like
Yeah.
this one is exactly
The,
like a card we've
yep.
seen before. These are as well, and then these three kind of go together, right?
Yeah. Hey, listen, I like completing cycles. It seems good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have ample supplies, also known when I saw this in a very blurry image on a FFG stream as apple supplies, because there are apples in there.
There are indeed.
Uh, level 2, cost 1, limit 1 per investigator. It is a supply itself, so I guess you can get it off your backpack. Uses 2 supplies. After you discard 1 or more cards from hand, exhaust this, place 1 supply on this card, and then when you want, discard it from play. Move each supply on this card to your resource pool as resources. So it's a weird upgraded, maybe side grade of investments. The level 0 card in Rogue from Circle Undone. But it comes in with some money already, so
True.
I don't know how I feel about this one. Like, what is the use of this compared to Lawrence Carlyle?
Remind me who that is again?
This guy.
Oh, right. More money.
Yes, our big money survivors.
Right, and I think that's why he lives in the same vein for me as Lawrence Carlyle, as he seems very good on the off class.
Mm.
If they have reliable ways of discarding, like, it's not illicit, so Preston could take it. I don't know if that matters. Does Preston have good ways to discard cards from hands? No idea.
This stuff.
That's true. None of these are illicit. So maybe even more money. Trying to think. I mean, that's basically all I can think about. Yeah, I mean, I think it is tricky because, as I said, survivors do not really have ways to spend a ton of resources. And so it's like, why do we even need these resources? It kind of seems like a little redundant.
Mm-hmm.
But potentially other classes could take advantage of that as well. And I'm trying to think of some.
Tommy, I don't know. Like, again, you have to be discarding stuff from hand, and it's not that easy.
Right.
Again, you have to build around it. That's fine. But I feel like Lawrence, maybe if you don't want the intellect boost, which, by the way, I didn't mention is like really rare at level
Yeah.
0. Maybe you don't want that, so this just looks better. But is it worth spending 2 XP? Maybe.
Maybe. I am thinking, so obviously we've been saying like, oh, survivors don't want to spend a lot of money. I feel like there is maybe one survivor that I can think of right now that actually does like having a lot of money, and that's Patrice.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
so that she can cycle a lot of the cards, or she can use a lot of the cards she has in hand before she has to discard them. And technically, obviously, her discarding cards from her hand during her upkeep phase would, I believe, trigger this.
Yeah.
So maybe let's just like leave this there, just have it accrue every turn for like 5 rounds, and then just take 7 money when you want to like cast 3 different mystic spells at the same time, something like that.
You discard it before you reshuffle the deck.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. I don't think it's a bad card. It's just one where you have to sort of think about, okay, I guess I'm going all in on Scrapper and Plucky and just spending the resources away, which is not impossible. Right. It's just, it feels slightly overcosted, but some of these glue cards. So yeah, I think a lot of people compare this to Hunting Jacket from last cycle, where that gave you 6 resources basically, but also soak and kind of, well, card neutral, but it pretty much gave you 6 resources over the course of a couple turns. But it gave you soak, and this cost the same in terms of XP. It can give you 6. If it gives you net 6, that needs to take you like what, 5 more rounds. Not bad. Doesn't take up a slot.
Yeah. I finally remembered another survivor that does like having a lot of money, and that is Will York.
Yeah, he can play it
also
from
because
discard.
He can play this from his discard pile. So if he has ways to discard cards, obviously that's really good for him, just because then he can play them. But then he'll have a lot of money, because I think that that's part of the reason why Schaffner's was so good in him, because that was a really easy way to get like emergency caches after every single kill. So this might also serve a similar purpose, albeit a little harder, just because it'll be harder to get immediate value out of this because it exhausts every time. So
Yeah, it's slower.
yeah.
All right, let's move on to a card that we have seen before in a level 0 deck that was from Dream Eater. So this is a Myriad card as well. A Glimmer of Hope, level 2. Exactly the same as the old one in terms of text on the card. A Glimmer of Hope can only be played from your discard pile as the action that you play as the event. Add all copies of A Glimmer of Hope in your discard pile to your hand, including this copy. So you kind of want to get them all in the discard pile and then play one of them, and then they all come into your hand, which is kind of neat. So it's the classic discard fodder card. I think this one plays a little bit differently, though, too, because there's the difference between the level 0 and this one is it's got 2 more icons. It's got the willpower and agility icons, so it really wants you to commit it to tests.
Yeah.
The never-ending unexpected courage, kind of.
Yeah, I think if I'm honest, I don't think I not like. I don't know if this upgrade is worth it. Because as you said, I feel like Glimmers of Hope have always, not always, usually been discard. I keep saying discard fodder. And this only helps with it being committed, albeit that is good. Like you'll have huge defenses in the Mythos phase that you can basically refresh every round if you need to. So like maybe that's good, but I don't know. I mean, it. I would be fine if I just have it as level 0 the whole time. I think. Um,
So I think for
yeah.
George, it's the one card here that looks like a skill, right? You discard it with your nautical charts or something, get the extra clue. Now it's in your boat, and then you drew a card from doing that. Then you get to commit this into the actual discard pile too.
That's true. Yeah, that is true.
So it's the one that actually looks pretty good as far as discarding for trying to pass a skill test. So
Yeah.
it's better the harder it is for you to pass skill tests.
Right.
I mean, I feel like I'd rather just commit this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's Myriad. You get 3 of them for 2 XP. I don't know. I'm kind of down on Myriad cards these days just because there's so many good cards that you could include in your deck, and the third copy kind of is the value.
Right.
Uh,
Slash like a slight XP discount, right?
right, exactly. So is that worth it? Maybe like some Dream Enhance and Serum stuff would be cool with this, but I'm not a huge fan of the card. I think it's a nice upgrade, but maybe this is also for Marion. Remember, Marion can play fortune cards?
Oh, true. Is that up to a certain level? I'm trying to
Level
remember.
2, yeah.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
So
Does she like this?
she likes it as an event to play.
Oh, true. True. Okay. Yeah, fair. That's weird.
It is weird. And we could
Whoa.
like
Okay.
have the same discussion about catch
Yeah.
and unconventional method for making the Remington lead play or something.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I mean, those are legit, like, good strats, I think.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know. There's something to be said for that. I like. I've noticed this a bit with this cycle. This particular box has more synergy that's like kind of closed off into the particular archetypes that the investigators are doing, rather than just like generically good card, which I think is totally a great thing that the designers are doing. So
Yeah.
they look maybe a little bit worse when we talk about them, but I think all of these cards have a cool play style that they enhance from the investigators in this box.
True. Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's move on. Good weather. This one was previewed. Yeah, this one's also fortune card, so Marion could take it, although it's not going to provoke her procer ability. So it's also Myriad. It's fast. Play after the investigation phase begins. Group limit 1 in play. Put Good Weather into play next to the agenda deck and choose a skill. While this card is in play, each investigator gets +2 to the chosen skill. And then when the investigation phase begins, you discard it. So this is going to be the next round, essentially.
Right. It turns out Foot was good all along.
Yeah, so we're referring to the Whispers of Hypnos card from Dream Eaters that people always have to choose something to be -2. It's also reminiscent of making preparations. I think that was the
Yeah,
dilemma from Scarlet Keys.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so the idea here is that you get to play this, and based on what you know is going to happen that round, there's a lot of enemies on the board. Everyone gets +2 to combat.
Right.
Everyone needs to investigate. +2 to intellect. Yeah. What do you think?
Let's see. Myriad. That's good. So again, only 2 XP for 3 copies. I do like, for some reason, having like especially in, I mean, obviously this is like a multiplayer card. Like having this in 4 players seems very good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or at least having its max value there. Like everyone having +2 intellect on a round where like everything's kind of chill, so we can just like grab a bunch of clues, even have off cloovers try and get some clues. Seems good. Um, I do think obviously it lasts until the next investigation phase begins, and so you could be like, nothing going on now, but we could be like, everyone get good brain, so the mystics can do stuff, and then we might have like some defense in the mythos phase, although
Mm-hmm.
it's like a little less reliable. Um,
Hey, if you have that mystic card that lets you look at the top card of the deck.
that is true. That is true.
I mean, that's the stars aligning, of course, but
Right. I mean, like it. I I think that maybe this is a. I don't know if this is a generically good card, but I do think that in certain scenarios this can be very good. So maybe it's a good tech card.
mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I'm at right now.
I think that it's tough to build a team where the +2 is like reasonably good for everyone to one
Yeah.
skill, right? Because you have your I- okay, maybe it's not tough, but like you have to keep that in mind that if you have Nathaniel Cho on your team and then Daisy Walker or something, like which skill are you picking that everyone likes?
Right.
Is this worth it if only one person in a team of 3 is actually using that skill, or it could have just been, I mean, it's still like +2 for maybe 3 or more actions, right? That's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Hey, I mean, I don't. Maybe we're all playing Mystics, so just say +2 brain for everyone.
Oh, that's where I was going with this. Like you play
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
Patrice, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
Get your team of, 3 other willpower mystics, and you always say willpower. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Patrice, of course, is going to run through her deck really quickly, so this the
You'll
myriad
see them a lot.
part is, yeah, you're going to play this, at least 4 or 5 times a scenario. I like that.
I mean, that does seem pretty good.
And I think
Um.
George probably can get through his deck reasonably quickly. Does he have a deck size that's unusual?
I can't.
He does, yeah,
Yeah.
35.
Weird. I think we have 2 investigators that are 35, right? Isn't Agatha? Yeah, Agatha's at 35 too.
Yeah. Hmm. Um. Yeah, I've seen lots of interesting takes on this one. Like some people are like, "This is broken." I'm not there. That seems
Yeah.
a bit absurd. It's good. It's good weather, but I think you have to be concentrating on how you get the value out of it. And what I like about the best though is that it makes you make some cool decisions. Like you might not just always say the same thing, or you might
Yeah.
not even play it, right? You might say, "I'm going to hang on until next round when this might actually be more useful."
That's true. Yeah, it is nice that, as opposed to making preparations, it's not a delivery to play immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So this can really have some good strategy with it.
Mm-hmm. And if you have more than one, of course, in your hand, right? You can only play one. So
Yeah.
all right. Yeah. Speaking of filling out archetypes, we have Improvised Weapon level 2. Mentioned it a little bit earlier. There was 2 other members of this cycle back in the Forgotten Age, Winging It and Impromptu Barrier. Yeah. So this one, the difference between it and the level 0 version is
-2 fight. And also when you do it from your discard pile, you draw a card.
that's right.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So it has extra card draw, which is awesome, and -2 fight, which is also really good. I always had a soft spot for this card at level 0. I think it was playable, but it kind of needed you to be really scrappy.
It definitely Winging It definitely took its spot, I think, as
Yep.
like the really good one of this cycle. And yeah, like I don't disagree. Improvised Weapon, it was playable. But I'm curious why they didn't do the whole cycle in this one. Maybe they just didn't have enough room.
Yeah, I ran out of card space, I guess, but
Yeah.
this seems quite good. I mean, again, it's still only doing the 2 damage plus 1 damage, which might be fine, but I think it's really here for this shuffling, drawing more cards, right?
Yep.
This is improvised, so Marion could play this as well if she chooses
Yep.
that as her off
Yep.
thing. That seems really
Yep.
good.
Yep. Draw 2 cards off of playing from discard pile seems pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's a well-designed upgrade.
Yeah, and I think that -2 fight is really good. That like it really increases the range of enemies that can get dropped to 0 fight if possible. So
Yeah. So then you have your exploit weakness from back in the day that then just automatically, right? I mean, actually kind of neat, right? So exploit weakness is the one that if you difficulty is 0, then you just defeat the enemy or something or discard it. Might just be
yes,
discard.
and then if it's like elite, it deals like 3 damage or something.
Yeah. So this makes it much easier to pull that off, but also if it's sitting in your discard pile, you don't have to line up the cards that much, right?
Yeah,
So then you draw like another card off of that. I think that's a legit combo that I think is worth trying in like a Stella deck or something.
interesting.
Okay, moving to level 3 cards. We've got another upgraded card from the Forgotten Age, Last Chance. This one has 6 icons. That's a lot of icons. Old one only had 5. Commit only to a skill test with no other cards committed to it. Other cards cannot be committed to the skill test, and then it loses a wild for each card in your hand. So not this one, everything else. If this test is successful while Last Chance is committed to it, draw 2 cards. That's the new text here.
Yep, and I think one more icon. If am I wrong?
Yep,
Actually, I
one
don't know.
more icon. It had
Yeah,
5 in the original.
that's right. Yeah, this card's sick.
So Justin has been saying that this is actually Unexpected Courage level 3 or whatever.
Yep.
So it looks a lot like how the cycle of the other upgraded skills, core set skills like Guts and Manual Dexterity, all had, if this test is successful, execute by 2, you draw 2 cards instead of 1.
Yep.
This is kind of that for Unexpected Courage.
Yep.
Which necessarily needed to be like more than just 2 XP to have
correct.
that extra draw, but man.
I mean, I basically agree with him. I think that this card is honestly nuts. Obviously it is 3 XP, so that blocks it from a lot of investigators, which is a good choice, I think, making it really survivor only. But I think that this card might be like a generically good card. Because thinking about it, right? If you have 5 cards in hand, one of them being Last Chance, you commit it, then you have 4 cards in hand. It becomes Unexpected Courage. If you succeed, draw 2 cards. Correct? That's insane because you start the game with 5 cards. So usually, if you're a survivor, you're probably going to have less cards than that. And like this, I think it's just really good. Like it's wild. There's no restrictions on when you can commit it. So obviously you can't commit it with other things, but like it kind of feels like a promise of power where you can kind of just commit it to one thing you need to do and or like a mythos test you need to pass and then like draw 2 cards off that. That seems really good.
Yeah, so when you compare it to level 0, Last Chance, which to me came out in Forgotten Age, but it was really for Patrice, right?
Yeah.
The play pattern for this card in Patrice was you take your turn, you do a bunch of weird stuff, and the last thing you do, you commit this.
Yep.
And then, great, it had like, 4 icons or something, or maybe 5. That's really good. And you use cards like Cornered sometimes to get you there a bit quicker. That gave you a skill boost also. But she didn't want the card draw, right? Because her turn ended, right?
Yeah, maybe the upgrade is bad for Patrice.
I mean, it might be.
Yeah, that's funny though.
But that's exactly my point. Is that this is an upgrade to a card that the play pattern was dump your hand.
Right.
This, it says you can dump your hand, but really you are refilling your hand while you're doing it.
Yeah.
And that's neat because there's a lot of ways to get rid of cards in your hand in this set. Obviously, we've talked about a lot of them already. But imagine George, right? So George can discard even this through one of these other effects. And he's playing with a very low number of cards in his hand. Part of his play style is dump things one way or another into the discard pile or into the boat. This lets you, maybe even commit it while you have almost nothing left in your hand in the first place, and then start refilling your cards in hand. So this is a draw engine for sure, but it's also very, very playable with these other effects.
Yep.
And that's fun. Like, isn't it interesting that we haven't really had a no card investigator until now?
Right. Yeah, it is interesting. They're trying to open up that space for sure. Like obviously, as you said, I think Patrice has some elements of like the no hand play style just because of the way that she worked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, we're getting like almost dedicated support at this point.
Yeah, and the reason why it worked so well in George is that it's not. I mean, in a card game, like you need cards in hand. Like this is the whole point of a card game. The reason it works is because he's not really getting rid of the cards.
Yeah.
He's stashing them away in the boat. And the discard pile too, for a lot of survivors, it works in a similar fashion. It's just that here it's like not your hand, well, but also kind of your hand. But here's an extra hand to play with. You're playing with three hands. You're playing with the discard pile, your actual hand, and then your boat.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. Patrice did this somewhat, but her hyper draw basically meant that this effect is not that important.
Hmm.
Neat
Yeah.
design.
I mean, I think it's really cool, and I think it's really good.
Yeah, we're gonna find out if it's like totally busted at 3 XP. I don't think so, but
No, honestly, I think 3XP was the right choice. It obviously it makes it high enough where you're like, I have to actually make the choice to include this and like basically be like my entire draw economy of my deck is probably just going to be this card,
yeah, yeah.
to make 3XP worth it. So
Yeah, compared to Nothing Left to Lose, right? That's also 3 XP. It removes itself from the game because it's pretty strong, but it also gives you a lot of cards and resources if you're playing it right.
yeah,
I think that card would be really good in George too, by the way. But
yeah,
this might be like a pretty a little more synergistic card.
Mhm.
All right, last one. Speaking of synergistic cards, Gift of Nodens. I've talked about this before. I'm sure everyone has seen it before. It was previewed back in January or so. 2 cost asset, 5 XP. So one of these very few unicorns, a level 5 survivor card. I think we only have like what,
We have two others.
2 others?
There's Deja Vu and Dark Horse 5, and that's it.
Wow. All right. You can get the customizable cards up to level 5, right?
That's true. And also, I guess those are those are also permanent. So
Mm.
this isn't permanent. So that's interesting.
Okay. It's a ritual reaction. When you commit cards to a skill test that you are performing, choose a survivor skill card in your discard pile and discard 1 card from your hand. That sounds like a lot of restrictions. It honestly isn't. Commit the chosen skill to the test. After the skill test resolves, place that skill card on the bottom of your deck. Limit once per round.
Oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that they finally figured out how to make not a good, but a appropriately costed level 5 survivor card. I think, because yeah, I mean, I I I it's not I don't think it's busted, but it's really really good, right?
Mm-hmm. Let's talk
Um,
about why that is. So most card games, right? Recursion is dangerous to play with, right? It's really
mhm.
good to have instead of just whatever is in your 5 cards in your hand or something, you're playing with the whole discard pile. But this is actually kind of different. It's not only letting you put things into the discard pile that you want, otherwise to use later or you just don't want them in your hand, but you're basically turning anything in your hand into whatever the best thing in your discard pile is.
Yep.
Itself is like resourceful, right? But you don't need to do, don't need to find a skill test to get something back. You don't have to pass the test. This just, you do it. And whether or not the test succeeds or fails, that skill card goes back into your deck at the bottom. But remember back, I said something about shuffling your deck. Yeah, I mean, you can make that card on the bottom of your deck reappear somewhere a little bit closer, or at least not be on the bottom with some other shenanigans like scroll secrets or something.
Hmm.
Or if you get, like pretty low in the deck, right? If you're going through your deck pretty quickly and you start using this, I mean, this is kind of just to keep you from going through the deck too quickly, I suppose, because you're reusing things without having to do the reshuffle.
Yeah.
But even so, like you have your sharp vision or something, or your contemplative, you commit it from the discard pile, and then it is maybe going to be used again pretty soon.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that survivors have so many really really good skill cards. like as we said, sharp vision, brute force,
Mhm.
um, even resourceful, which is the classic recursion card. But like uh I think that honestly the trickiest bit about this card obviously is that you need to find it,
Yep.
um, and then play it, and it like doesn't it doesn't do something when it enters play, so you have to like probably have a plan like play this and then immediately like take a skill test to like get value out of it.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that it it effectively I mean, as you said, every card in your hand becomes the best skill card in your discard pile.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm just like am imagining now, like not the loops per se, but like if your entire hand is skill cards, you like take a skill test, commit one, and then you know use a different card to commit it again, put it on the bottom, and then just repeat that over and over again to get like so much extra value. Um, I don't know. I mean, I think it's really good.
Yeah. So the general gating of this of the effect of cards in your deck is that you only get two of them, maybe sometimes three. And this says nope. You get to reuse things, and you kind of turn things that are in your hand into, as you say, the best one that's in your discard pile for that moment. And that's probably going to be the most interesting usage of the card, where you are using kind
Yeah.
of everything and not just trying to cycle, your same brute force over and over again. But you certainly can do that. It does feel to me that this one is like Antikythera, where it's a capstone to the class, but doesn't itself do anything to make anything happen. Like you still have to succeed by stuff to make that other card do stuff. But in this one,
Yeah.
requires you build your deck around some good skill cards and getting them in the right place. That's not that hard to do. It
Yeah.
just it'll happen.
Yep. And just to clarify, because I think that's how this would work with George Barnaby, but
Mm-hmm.
if you discarded a card to the Gift of Nodens, you'd then be able to, and you put that underneath him, you would then be also to commit that card that you discarded, correct?
When you commit, yeah. So this is before you are committing your normal cards. So I mean, the only part that I'm not unsure about, and maybe someone's done a ruling about this or talked about it before, is that like theoretically you commit all of the cards at the same time, but because it's a when, I think you can then commit it,
Right.
right? So it's like when you commit cards, so you do this ability before you actually commit any of the other ones.
Yeah, because like you could then even when you activate this effect, you could still commit other cards as well. I
Mm-hmm.
think.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the point in which you're committing from underneath George Barnaby.
Correct. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. That sounds right to me. I mean, like when you commit cards is that it's that step 1.2 or whatever it is in the skill test timing, where it's after the free triggered ability, right, and then before the other one,
Yeah,
sandwiched in between those free triggered ability windows, you have commit cards, and that all happens at once. They all need to be in your hand at the same time. You commit them all at once, and then this happens before any of that does because it's a win.
I think so. Yeah.
That's how I'd rule it based on in reading this, but you never know. Hey, that's all the survivor cards.
Hey, we did it.
Yeah. I think these are really good. I like that they feel cohesive. I said that halfway through already, and they seem good for George and a little bit for Marion.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall they're really good. I think we got a lot of honestly, we got a lot of like clue support, like with the
Mm-hmm.
not charts and contemplative, and unconventional methods. So that's pretty good. And like a lot of them had to do with discard stuff, but like I feel like some of these can also be generically good. So I mean, I think they kind of nailed it.
Yeah. So he also could take Rogue and Seeker cards level 0, and
Mm.
there were Artistic Inspiration was the one that he probably can take in Seeker. That makes sense. And that one gives you, for discarding cards, it gives you like a lucky effect.
Yeah,
That's also, you probably just put it in. But maybe later you don't need it because you're just passing stuff anyway.
right.
Okay, that's it. We'll move on to the 4 neutral cards, which I don't think will take that much time. Aesthetic. I don't know what to say about this card. If you haven't seen it already, here it is. Campaign mode only, permanent limit 1 per deck, only at deck creation. When you purchase this card, gain 10 experience, and for the remainder of the campaign, you cannot earn experience. Funny story, when I was previewing cards for this set, I was given this one as a potential one to spoil, and I looked at it and I said, no thank you, and instead I previewed this one.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, the reason why I was like trying to think through this, I was like, what is this card? Why are you doing this? Very confused. And I get it. Like some people have done the theory craft as I did at the time too, of like, oh, could you run a down the rabbit hole arcane research Father Mateo deck and just start with like your 15 experience or 18 with in the thick of it and uh, find a pathway to upgrading a bunch of cards without needing to gain experience or earn
Yeah.
experience. And that's interesting to me anyway for about 10 minutes. And then you're like, but why are you playing the game then? Literally, some campaigns you can go through and just resign, and doesn't matter what else happens in that scenario. You just resign, you get the same discount you were going to get anyway. To me, like playing the game is about trying to like accomplish a goal. And the goal, unfortunately, maybe often is how much XP can I get?
Right.
And that's the tension, right? Like, yeah, you go through the acts and agendas and you do what the game wants you to do and whatnot. But I feel like I'd be like, oh, here's a VP location that has a four shroud and a bunch of clues. I continue on because it doesn't.
Yep.
I don't need to do anything here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I think I see this card in a couple of different ways. One is um, kind of as a meme, as in to say that
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that some people will be like, let's make a challenge run where everyone has to take a Cydic at the beginning of the game and let's see how the campaign goes,
Mm-hmm.
right? As a challenge, as opposed to it being either a good card or like a way to enhance the gameplay. It's just like, we've wanted to rush through this campaign. And obviously, a lot of the scenarios in the earlier campaigns you can't just resign. But maybe they're thinking about that when it
Yeah,
comes to
Arkham
this
speed
card.
run.
Exactly. I think the other one, which is maybe a little more like not appropriate, but the one that I would definitely like think about is like if your investigator gets defeated in like the last second to last scenario, and you're like, okay, let's just bring Ashcan Pete, which a lot of people do to be like, yeah, we didn't get that much XP anyway, so
Mm-hmm.
bring Ashcan Pete in. Oh, we can take this card and we'll start with 10 XP at least. Um, so that's something to maybe think about, right? To be like, if at a baseline, you can like start the final scenario with maybe a chance.
Yeah, if your investigator gets killed or goes insane or just
Yeah,
has too
or
much
you like,
trauma.
yeah, or you like want to trade him off. Exactly.
Yeah, that is true. That is a test case for people who, yeah, I totally see that as an option for some people, and I'm hoping, although who knows, that this campaign isn't going to be like, haha, we kill you after scenario 3. You know, that can happen, right? Where they give you a little bit of a little gotcha moment if you get defeated somewhere. I mean, it's happened in a lot of the scenarios, a lot of campaigns, but um, is this a little warning sign?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like if it killed you off that early, you'd still not want to take this, right? It
Right.
would literally have to be kill you at the second to last scenario, or maybe like the third to last or
Mm-hmm.
something.
You're
Um,
right. You're right. And that's sort of the thing about, again, it's an interesting challenge if you do the whole down the rabbit hole, whatever thing. But you also can take those cards and not this, and probably get more XP.
right.
Right. So like,
Yeah.
I was trying to think like, is there any way to like game this to
Right.
be better than other options? And I think the answer is no, unless you just don't want to interact with the scenarios with XP in general. And maybe
Right.
this is just an interesting meme. Sure, sure, go for it.
Yeah. And I think that that's part of the reason why it's not for us, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes any sense. It's for a different player.
Yeah, and yeah, if you're gonna use it because you died and this is the consolation, yeah, that's fine with me. Let's move on. Short rest. This is the one I spoiled. and it is a card that I don't think many people like, and I see why. I think it's just interesting as an event that for Marion, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's not good. It's a neutral card. It shouldn't be good. Level 0 healing is always bad,
Yeah.
and this is just very slow and expensive. But I like the idea.
We're gonna try having a short rest of 12. We're gonna try.
Oh, who are the investigators?
Uh, I don't care because it's neutral. I don't know. Just people with a huge draw, so we'll have Amanda be one.
Okay.
Um, I don't know.
I like it. I like the idea. It's
Yeah,
a little sad that only 3 came in the box. Like it would be more interesting if they gave us
yeah,
6.
yeah. Right. That'd be funny.
Well, some people be annoyed, be like, I have 6 copies of this crap. Like,
Yeah,
come on.
exactly. You're like, this is worse than the flashlights. I don't need 10
That's
flashlights.
right. I mean, they said it's a short rest, but it seems like a long rest to me. I think the card's fine. It's just
Yeah,
you can't expect everything to be that great.
yeah.
That's
I
it.
think like okay, honestly, I agree basically with everything you said. I think the reason why I really not so I don't okay, let me clarify. I'm probably never going to take this card. With that in mind, I love this card from a pure flavor standpoint, not just because of like the flavor of it being a short rest, but because the way that you have to initiate you playing this card, which is does anyone want to take a short rest?
Yeah.
It's so good. That's so good because like I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, and that's also exactly how you start that conversation. Where like, do we want to do a short rest right now? And I think that's like the idea of it being like a collaborative thing. I think is really funny. Anyway, that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah. I wish they had more cards like this, but I can see that you can't really do it unless they're neutral.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I want to put it in a boxing gloves deck just because it's a
Oh,
spirit. Yeah.
yeah,
Anyway. Yeah. Confidence. This is an interesting neutral card because it feels like a mystic card.
yeah.
One icon, max 1 committed per test for each additional chaos token revealed during the skill test, even if it was canceled or ignored. That's wacky to me.
That's wacky.
Confidence gains a question mark, wild, to a maximum of +3, so it gets you up to 4. This card looks a lot like what was the one from last time? Well dressed, where you get 1, but then
Oh yeah.
it's like always committable, but then you get plus up to +3, so it's up to 4.
It gains 3, so it'd be a promise of power for parlay. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
this could be a promise of power if you have at least 4 tokens revealed, slash whatever, right?
So if you use all of 2, right, then you get 3
Correct.
total extra.
Yes, if you activate the Rod of Carnivacus.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I still don't actually know if we've had a ruling on that, by the way.
I mean, it works like people thought it should because
Okay.
they haven't gone back on it. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
the wording of it is
Yeah.
suggests that, and maybe it shouldn't have been worded that way. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know, obviously, but like, this could be a potential like replacement. Well, okay, not replacement, because I think okay. Let me compare this to Promise of Power because I have to, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
One, this does feel like it's a mystic card, which is a little weird, but whatever. I think the thing about this is that I was thinking about Jacqueline Fine, right? Because she can do this every round. Does she want more icons when she does that? And I'm like, no, she doesn't need them because you're choosing the tokens you resolve anyway, and either you're gonna like the one use case is if you draw like auto fail, elder sign, elder thing, right? Where you're like, well, I'm screwed. I have to take 2 elder things, right? So in this one case, this card would help with that. But it's tricky because Promise of Power, its power is that you can commit it to anything and it has 4 wild icons all the time.
Already, yeah.
And so you don't need to put any more of the token manipulation effects / cards into a Promise of Power test.
Right.
And so like I think you're on the right track with maybe like Olive McBride level 0, where you're like, I have to resolve 2 of these. This can overcome that downside, but when she gets to level 2 or whatever, like that's usually fine. So yeah, I don't know.
Right. So I mean, look, it's a neutral card. Neutral cards are, by their nature, weak. So why did they make this a neutral card? They could have upped it a bit make it a little bit better, like start with 2 icons or something, and
Maybe
make it a mystic card.
maybe this is like campaign tech that we don't know about. That like there's going to be cards that cause everyone to reveal additional chaos tokens. Maybe.
Yeah,
Uh,
I could see that.
yeah, I don't know.
I
It is kind
mean,
of weird.
it's okay. The other argument for it being not a mystic card is that they didn't want it to take up Agatha's other color.
Right.
So she's Seeker. You still want this because she wants to do the whole token manipulation thing, kind of, or sealing or canceling or something. And then if it were Mystic, you'd have to reach into the 10 Mystic cards that she gets, or whatever it is, level 0. So maybe that's why I think it's a bad argument, because just don't make it that
Yeah.
color or something. I don't know.
I don't know.
But it just doesn't feel like you want to put it in your deck. Oh, other thing for Agatha, though, right? Her weakness basically makes you reveal 2
Correct.
all the
Actually,
time.
I'm not.
So
Is that what it says? Yes.
yeah. So okay, and this is for Agatha.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, I don't disagree that this is a good Agatha card, because she's going to be doing this a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's at least going to be unexpected courage basically all the time,
Mm-hmm.
with some possibility to get higher than that. So that's can be pretty good. Yeah, that's basically where I see it.
Moving on. Last card, level 4 card. It is a permanent asset, spiritual healing, condition blessed, permanent, limit 1 per deck. When you purchase spiritual healing, remove 1 point of physical or mental trauma from your investigator. The end.
The end.
Would you ever do this?
I mean, okay. So maybe this is the power game we're talking, but you're like, if you're at a point where you need to purchase this card, you should just take a new investigator, right?
Just do this. Just
Exactly.
for the sake.
Yeah, and again, I think that this card is not meant for us, like us players that are either really good at this game, quote unquote, or like really like to min max decks, or like really need to go after tons of XP during scenarios. I think that if you're more chill or like more playing casually, I can see use cases for this. But it definitely does feel like this is a this, like, if you're trying not to die and you have to choose this card as your solution for not dying, either there are better ways to do it with 4 XP, or you're like you're too far gone, like you're going to lose anyway. But I mean, I can see the appeal basically.
So, I mean, it being a permanent, I guess, helps, because the basic way you usually do this in the core set is you buy Bulletproof Vest or Elder Sign Amulet.
Yeah.
And those are both cheaper.
Yeah.
And
But
probably save you like more points of damage or horror, because they're, they basically give you extra 4.
Yeah. I mean, you still have to draw them and play them, obviously.
Yep.
So like there's that one benefit. But yeah, I agree.
What does it cost in the Forgotten Age to remove trauma? Wasn't it like 5 XP?
I'm trying to remember because it's been so long. It was either 4 or 5, and or in the return to you could spend supply points to do that.
Right. Because that's like pretty
yeah.
rare to do that too, unless you can't use the supply points.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, like, again, there are use cases for this where you're like, at the last scenario, you have like a bajillion XP that you don't know what to spend it on, and you're like, sure, I'll just take this. It's like take Observed or whatever. You're like, I don't care.
I mean, I'll definitely take Observe first, but
yeah, probably.
You're right. If I've
just for fun.
If I have 50 XP and deck is done and I don't want to remove cards from my deck, that's the part about Bulletproof Vest. Or the other one is that you have to make room in the deck for it, and this at least solves the problem without forcing you to take something out of the deck. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think, I think that I personally wouldn't judge someone if they felt like they needed to take this. I don't think I would ever take it, is my thing, because there are better permanent cards that you can take for this, either this amount of XP or less, that will probably win you the game more instead of trying for you not to die. And there are also, now that there are a lot of cards in the card pool that can kind of do some healing while also advancing the game, there are better ways to heal off the trauma while also fighting / investigating / drawing cards, etc. So
Okay,
yeah.
okay, you're rolling banks and you're going into the last scenario. Your deck is pretty much done, but you
Yeah.
have 2 mental trauma
Ooh.
from, cover up or who knows what else.
Yep.
So you buy this, and then that, first Mythos phase where you draw Frog Remains and draw a auto fail token, it doesn't kill you.
Yay.
There we
There
go.
you go.
Great card. It saved me from dying. I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't do nothing. This is like a reasonable
Correct.
effect.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that's it for us right now. I've asked before, like, which of these cards are you excited to play? I guess we didn't just stop and do that after Survivor, so it could be anything here, but what you looking at?
Honestly, probably
That's
contemplative.
the one I wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just seems so good, and it's kind of fun to play with. I like the idea of
Yeah.
getting this off of someone at a connecting location.
I'm always going to be excited for level 0 cards that seem very powerful, or high level cards that are assets that I can reliably find to play. So things like Gift of Nodens,
Yeah.
things like that.
I'm with you. Okay, seems fun. Next time we'll be working through the specialist cards. There's a lot of them, so we'll probably break that into 2 videos. We'll see how it goes. I like to keep these at about an hour. So look for that discussion next week, and until then, see ya.
Bye.